1.3 roughly DC solar array. There's actually two separate solar arrays on the parcel. Okay. The first one was developed several years earlier. You may remember it sat incomplete because Sun Edison was bankrupt. I was able to recover from their bankruptcy and solve all that, eventually completed the project, and it was bought by NRG, who in turn sold it to Clearway. So now Clearway owns it. They're one of the world's largest renewable energy companies. Great tenant. So I did the original permits for both solar arrays, and I was able to, and they were issued to me, to my company. When we sold the projects, through the first one through Sun Edison, and the second one went through Borrego and then to Clearway. I think you're right. I think that they now have the interest in the permits that you issue the special permits. So they would be the entity would be Clearway.
Correct.
Would be providing the clarification that they're okay with it that you're requesting. So a while back, I had mentioned to Ron that I needed to make sure that the solar company would agree with this. So I have an email with them where they said they will agree. They don't have a problem with it, but I'm sure you're gonna want something more formal than an email exchange between me and Clearway. So we will get that. I'm not expecting a problem with it because they already told me they'll agree with it. So that'll be fine. I wanna make sure, and the reason why I'm here tonight is because I'd like to see Ron be able to do what he wants to do. But the reason I'm here tonight is to make sure that whatever we do here, we don't in any way interfere with the permits that were issued to the solar projects, both of them, not just the one that you referred to. So the good news is that it's the same owner. It'll make it easier. But we need to make sure both permits are addressed, not just the second one. And at that time, I believe it was still the planning board. It was a special permit granting authority.
It was.
That had approved, that had the oversight, because for a while it was not clear if it was going to be the Board of Selectmen, the ZBA, or the planning board.
Yeah, but the pilot agreement is still with the selectmen.
Right.
And I believe so. I don't think the stormwater has anything to do with that. And I'm not sure if it would even be a good idea to talk to stormwater in regards to this lot, these lots. Because when you disturb more than a certain amount of square feet, you have to go before them as well.
So the stormwater, I think, would be up to Ron in his development for whatever he's going to do.
Correct, yes.
Correct.
Apart from the solar.
Yes,
Whatever we did for stormwater containment, of which we did quite a lot, it's a long ways away from what Ron will be doing. As you mentioned, that there's hundreds of feet, that wetland complex divides the proposed building area that Ron has from the first solar array. Okay, so, and if you haven't been back there lately, it looked like when you first see it, there's two arrays. The first array is two subarrays. And you go up on the other side of the high tension lines, and that's where the second array is. So those two subarrays make the first one. Over the other side of the high tension line is down the hill. That's the second array.
Yeah, I've been back there.
A lot of guys come back for hunting and riding ATVs and so forth. So it's a good place for it. Okay, so we'll get you the letter.
Okay.
You want to deal with whatever you want to do with your perks and so forth. Okay, but I just want to confirm that when we're done, we present the letter, that I'll be looking for the planning board to somehow acknowledge that there's nothing we've done here that would in any way jeopardize the ability for the solar array to operate. Whether it be because we've removed frontage or anything like that, that I wouldn't have the town of Dayton at some point coming back to me and saying we violated something. I'm gonna look for that positive statement from the planning board as the permit granting authority that we're okay and we're authorized to make this, to do the subdivision.
I would still say that it would be a good idea for you guys to submit the plans in advance, and then we can have our attorney, the planning board attorney, review it to make sure that all the wording is there to
I agree.
to create no problems. And
And I'll have my attorney review that as well.
okay,
So what I would suggest, Ron, is this plan is, they zeroed in on the lots because that's what this is about. But I think you need another plan that shows the entire 88-acre property and locates the arrays on it.
Right, we can provide
that.
and give some distance from the proposed locations of the house and the property lines to the beginning of the array. We can show to the beginning of the actual layout, the easement, and the actual panels as well, if you'd like.
Yeah, the fence would be a good idea to locate with a fence, because that's the outer portion of the array. So I would say that to me, that's what I think would be important, is the fence area, the easement, make sure
Yeah, well,
that,
the as-built, I'm sure, yeah.
You have as the entire site, including the location.
okay, yeah, so the
Utility poles.
other thing that concerns me is the easement, the access into the arrays, and these lots do not interfere one with the other.
Right, so it was laid out in a way where the access is it's an easement across my land. And that access easement is we actually kept it as far away from the lot line as we could.
Okay, so,
the buffer between the access easement and the lot line that Ron's proposed.
yeah, as long as the lots don't run through these lots is really,
Yeah, it doesn't.
would be a big concern for me, so,
We made sure of that.
okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen. We look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you very much. Please reach out to Mrs. East today, and she'll let you know whatever you need. Just ask her, and she'll provide it for you. And then we'd have to look at the schedule to see when we'd be able to get you back on the agenda again.
We'll work on the list and simultaneously.
I'm gonna roll it up and put it back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great night. Next on this evening's agenda, I'd like to move on to 4A, number 2, under presentations, and this is Pure Oasis, 620 Spring Street, map 4, lot 170. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. Good for you.
Name and address, please, and your affiliation.
Sure. Brian Grossman, outside counsel to Pure Oasis. My law firm is Dottish and Dewey. Address is 200 Crossing Boulevard, Suite 300, Framingham, Mass. 01702.
Thank you.
We appreciate the board's time tonight. As you know, it's an informal presentation. Pure Oasis, as I think the board knows, has entered into a community agreement with the town of Dayton to locate a cultivation facility at 620 Spring Street. Pure Oasis is in the process of acquiring the property. In parallel, we're also starting to take a look at the permitting that would be required, so we can go ahead and get that filed. As we were doing that, I've had some discussions with the town administrator concerning one part of the zoning bylaw regarding, there's the middle section there, it's 2924 through 2926 has multiple setback requirements. We have a couple questions about that, and hopefully we get some clarification, communication with the board this evening. The one that started the conversation was, as you know, that building is extraordinarily large. We did a tour of it not that long ago. The architects have completely mapped it at this point. It is a labyrinth, and there's a lot of usable space that currently is required. One of the things that Pure Oasis is looking at is their operations in terms of cultivation. The original expectation was probably being about 70,000 square feet. We may be increasing that inside the facility. The other thing is they already had some inquiries from others that may want to do cultivation. And we think it's a good place to co-locate. So all the resources are already there, the power and those kinds of things, a lot of the infrastructure that would need to be developed to support just Pure Oasis would be there to support others. The issue is that 1,000-foot setback. I know the bylaw has, we know the bylaw has a waiver provision, but in terms of having discussions with additional cultivators, one thing that would make it easier is it has part of the Pure Oasis special permit. We understand the board ultimately isn't committing anything tonight, but we're going to have the discussion. Is would we be able to have a special permit that would allow for a process of the board and the town? Obviously, HCA would still need to be involved for any future cultivator. They have to do that separately. That's not something we can do under ours. And there would still be a planning board process, either an amendment to the special permit or some, we word a condition that would work that way to allow for co-location inside that building. Without them having to worry about, are we going to be able to obtain the waiver for the 1,000 feet? Some bylaws expressly call that out, that would allow for co-location of cultivation or co-location of retailers together. This one kind of leaves it open, and we think there's room under the zoning bylaw to say, like, if it's covered under the special permit granted for the property, and obviously with conditions so that the planning board still ultimately has control over what entity goes there, what size are they, what impact are they going to have from all the other considerations that you would consider here, quality, parking, traffic, hours of operation. Would we be able to possibly do that to make it a little bit easier to encourage co-location at the site? So that's the first question. If you have questions about that, I'm certainly happy to discuss it. I just wanted to have a preliminary discussion with the board about whether or not there would be even some opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. I know that Mr. Sheehan was in at our last meeting and had stated that Pure Oasis is going to be the tenants. And it's my understanding is that Pure Oasis would like to have the contents of the whole building, but I know how this works, is that canopy space is sold to different entities. So we did an informal poll of the planning board, I want to say about 4 to 6 months ago, about the same situation. And I believe that the consensus of the board was that, yes, we would be able to grant that type of waiver. Now, being the location of the front door, of course, is 1,000 feet away from the church and also the playground. Now, you're talking about the internal contents. So we would have a discussion with our, informal discussion with our attorneys to find out, to see exactly what we could do, because the CCC specifically says that you must be 1,000 feet away from X, Y, and Z. Now, internally, I think that we would be able to possibly be able to provide a blanket waiver for any other entity who would move into your facility, because you're going to use that main door as your 1,000-foot zone area. The setback away
That's
from.
actually one of the other questions we have for you.
Okay.
So, I think, and I see the color printout in front of you, so I'll address that as well. So what that is, that we provided to Ms. Easterday today, is just a very preliminary, the architects have done kind of initial mapping. They've mapped the existing tenants and done a very preliminary plan of what could go where, and color coded that with various things for office, for cannabis space, and the like. One of the questions we had is, and this can vary from bylaw to bylaw, is where are we measuring from when we're measuring setback? So some bylaws, again, are very, very explicit, which is either you are measuring from the property line, you're measuring from the nearest corner of the building you're in, regardless of where your use is, or you're measuring from the outer wall or the nearest point of your actual use. I can tell you for a fact, Worcester does it that way. So if you were, if the cannabis process were in this space in the old town hall and ended at that doorway right there that you walk in, that's where you measure from. And not from the outside portal of the building.
No, that's a very good question, because the size of this building, that can make a serious difference of where you measure from too.
Exactly,
You know,
because
so that's a very good
if you
question.
can,
100% changes the equation.
yes,
Oh,
if you consider the concrete pads that are on that property on the western end of that facility.
Right, down where the
Then-
dummy truck was.
Exactly, then you're talking about,
Pretty
you're
close.
less than 1,000 feet to the playground, but you're still over the 1,000 feet from the church, of course, on the other side. We'll have to find out, let me check exactly with our attorneys to see if they're using a survey point on, the far corner of the building, or are they just going specifically from the front door?
So basically, I'm sorry, basically what you're showing here is the cultivating areas would be in the, I'll call this pink area. There's no measurements here from where to and how many feet it would be. But honestly, I agree with this idea, measuring from where this is at. I don't know how the people on this blue section would like it, but a lot of people will move into that real fast. So we've got a serious sniff of this throughout our day, so, but anyways, that's another. But yes, I personally feel that the measuring should be from where it's being cultivated, not the entire building.
And as you read, as I read the bylaw, again, I wasn't the one who drafted it and wasn't involved in passing it, That seemed to me to be the right interpretation, which is because it talks about the use, not the building, not the property line. And you know, when drafting, boards know how to use those words, and you use them specifically. And so when you were talking about measuring from the use, it made sense to us, and that was kind of our preliminary determination. You know, this is where we think we should be measuring from. But again, it made sense to consult with you ultimately to pass on the application. Either way, it's actually not. I don't think it ultimately ends up being fatal because you have the waiver provision, and so it's waiver, not variance. The only issue is, you know, it just changes which relief we're requesting. Obviously, not being able to tell you, yes, we fully comply with the setback from here to here for this use is much better than asking for it.
Now, as I was looking at the plan that you presented to us this evening, I know it's preliminary, is that I want you to understand that no retail space can be used in this building if you're looking to do what you want to do. It's cultivation and manufacturing, that's it. Because there is a block here for retail space, and I also see up in the top corner that you're gonna have an internal brewery. Is that space gonna be rental space from, you know, Mr. Sheehan? Is he leasing that space, or are you gonna lease the space to the brewery, or how's that gonna work?
So
I see restaurants here also, so.
Those are completely preliminary in terms of conceptual.
Just the name was there, just to fill the space, basically.
Haven't even done the zoning review on it to tell
And
them whether or not
I'm
it's
not-
actually permitted use.
I'm not sure that would be allowable, because I don't believe we have an overlay on that piece of property. It's strictly industrial. And that's a busy road that goes by here. And I can't see restaurants or brewery operating there. You have limited parking across the street. And that little park that's across the street, that's historic. We don't ever want to see that used for parking or anything. It's
Yeah, I
just,
think we were talking about possibly donating that back to the town.
that would be one,
That'd be fantastic.
because that's historic. And that was really built for open space.
Yeah, the current proposal doesn't involve any change in terms of open space. It's all development on the main portion of the lot and then some of the other areas. In terms of uses, we haven't even done the full review in terms of ultimately what would be permitted. There were just kind of some conceptual thoughts and marking out. I think a lot of that space, as we said right now, is just currently vacant. And so what we were trying to do in part, which leads me to my next question, is what are we basing our parking calculation on? Because you have existing uses, which we've mapped out. We have a cultivation use, which we have an idea, you know, we pretty much have that nailed down in terms of either pure oasis space or pure oasis in, you know, potential leased space. And then you have a large area that is currently done really unaccounted for in terms of occupancy. It could be anything that is permissible in the industrial district, from, you know, additional office space to manufacturing space to what have you. We don't know what that's going, ultimately don't really know what that's going to be. Conceptually, we have some ideas around what it might be. And the issue is, from a parking perspective, when we're trying to do a parking calculation and tell you what our parking, A, what our existing is, and B, what the ultimate need is, and whether or not we need relief for reduced parking, is it the current occupied space and the solid, what I'll call the solid proposed space, understanding that any additional changes that add uses would then need to come back and demonstrate either it's still consistent with the parking requirements or needs some form of relief, or is it you got to take some idea of what you think the entire building is going to look like and do your parking calculation, and that's the parking that we're going to hold you to. And if a use changes and you need relief later, you're going to just have to come back.
I do want you to know that Spring Street is a very busy street, because the North Dayton Village is the most densely populated part of the town. And there's cars back and forth day and night there. I'd be, you know, the way they park now, just the employees backing out sometimes can be a problem with people coming down the hill, you know, not so much as going up the hill.
Well, they would have access to the lot, which would be to the,
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Southeast.
out back, there's a lot of parking.
which would be on the one boulevard side.
There's that big parking area kind of over on the, as you're standing looking at the property off to the right, you know, where the road is in the Dayton. But we're just trying to figure out exactly from, and again, this is one of those things where, you know, from experience, boards can do it 100 different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
We wanted to understand what Dayton wants to do, so that we can make sure we base our application off of that.
I don't want to be quoted because I don't have the bylaw book in front of me, but I believe that 10 or less spaces is only a minor modification, and 10 or more is a major modification for a lot, so. It would just be the question of the location, and where would you want to be able to put the lot to have it secured, where not only your employees, you probably have access through the back, I would assume. You wouldn't have your employees park out front, because if you're doing cultivation and you're gonna have other people coming in, you still want to leave that office, those spaces, parking spaces available across the street for, salesmen or whoever they may be, that are coming in. I hate to say this, but I would assume that, would you be using the loading dock where OEM is right now? They manufacture starters, and that would be,
Is that the loading dock we were at? And there was one major loading dock that we were at.
Yeah.
Kind of, you gotta go around back, and it's kind of almost in the middle of the building.
round
Yes,
back, yes, is
Yes,
that the one you're thinking about, the
that's
back?
the main
Yeah,
loading area,
okay.
and branch off, there'd be secured space to get to the cultivation space, but it would also be loading dock for
Okay.
loading.
I think the zoning bylaws state different uses, so many square feet, so many parking spaces. And this is kind of it's a little odd thing that I think we all are learning about. We're gonna have to do something about this, because we don't know what uses you're gonna have in order to determine the amount of parking spaces.
This is just a basic question. How many employees do you think that you would have within this whole complex working at one time?
Just for Pure Oasis.
Yes,
100.
100? So then you're gonna probably need 100 parking spaces, maybe.
Oh, they got all that.
So, yeah.
There's plenty of parking
yeah,
there.
There's plenty of parking.
Yeah, it's not the low number we're worried about, it's the theoretical
The
high number.
high number, yeah.
Right, that we can't kind of attribute anything to, because it's more theoretical based on having 100% capacity of all the other space and how that all works together. So we have enough space for what's existing in Pure Oasis.
Yeah.
It's the difference of if we had other cannabis tenants there.
The other sub, so who would be in?
Because that affects us in our initial application hypothetically, with having more of a blanket approval.
So 2 things. One, just for the record, Kobe Evans from Pure Oasis.
Pleasure to meet you, sir. Address, please, for the record.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Evans.
Kobe Evans, 398 Columbus Ave, Boston, Mass.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And that was, as Kobe said, one of the questions we have is, we have a counting of the existing spaces that are leased and being used and what those uses are. And then obviously we have kind of the solid plan in terms of what we think is going to be cultivation space. And so if we were just looking at those components, we could very easily do a parking calculation, say, here's what we think, here's what the bylaw says we need, here's what we have on site, and figure out the relief we need. The issue relates to what I'll call the dead space right now. And there's a ton of it, and whether we need to currently kind of permit some sort of master plan with all the parking attendant to that, or whether we can effectively permit, here's our existing, here's our proposed, this is what our calculations require, this is what we have on site, this is what it's gonna have to be restriped, there's gonna be some improvements made to it, here's what we're doing, there's our stormwater that goes along with that. And as additional uses, pardon me, as additional uses come online, then need to just modify that and say, new business use is taking up 10,000 square feet, this is what that use is, this is what the calculation requires, this is what we have on site still, it complies or it doesn't, or it needs additional relief, can you kind of piecemeal it, so to speak?
I don't know if
Is there a
this,
question?
I don't know if this is appropriate to ask, but Pure Oasis is not acting as a leaser, are they? Indirectly you are, because you're leasing retail space within the facilities you want to work out of.
To be clear, they're gonna own the property.
You guys
They'll
are,
own, so they'll own
okay.
the property, they'll operate their own,
I was gonna ask, their own cultivation and manufacturing, okay.
And then A would then become landlord to any of the existing.
And that would be the jump up from 70,000 square feet to approximately 105,000?
So within the scope of our own operation, our max out operation space is 100,000. But then we have, maybe another 200,000 square feet that we want to put out to the market.
Yeah.
Again, Dayton has presented itself as a town where cannabis companies would like to be located. So that coupled with a fast track of a special permit would make it more attractive. And so, yeah, so.
What would be your approximate timeframe to move in?
So move in.
When does your lease begin, I should say?
Well, when will you be purchasing the
Yeah.
property?
At the end of the month.
At the end of the month,
We'll
okay.
take possession by the end of the month, yeah.
And so we're expecting,
I think-
depending on the survey, which is still out there, I think we're expecting the next several weeks that we'll be
Yeah.
filing an application. We just want to make sure that we include everything. From a-
I think the only, getting back to the parking, I think the proper way, and again, this is just me, is to, as you lease out other spaces, it would have to be determined at that time as to how many parking spaces you would need and what type of business is there. It's almost impossible for us to tell you, how many parking spaces you're gonna need overall without knowing what type of business
Yeah,
is
'cause
there.
you,
That's the position we're in, is we're
Yeah.
doing calculations that we're
but you don't exactly know how many subtenants you're gonna have within the confines of the building, so.
Right. And what, I think blue is office space, and what's currently shown as office space, is also easily used for manufacturing. So ultimately, that use could change, we would have based a parking calculation off of it instead.
Because there are some even office spaces that are leased out that require a lot of different meetings of different people coming in at all times. And that right there can present a problem, for you especially, because if you have that type of a business and you have 100 people coming in every 2-3 hours for meetings, this and that, and you don't have parking spaces for that, you're not gonna be a happy landlord. That's,
So how do we address in terms of our initial application for Pure Oasis special permit or within, what we're trying to do? I think that's where the main question is, when we submit our plans and our, parking allocation, it sounds like we're better off using the lower number of what's existing in our Pure Oasis number, and then we have to come back each time to, reassess.
Yeah, we'll look into that. What I'd like to do is I'm gonna ask our office manager to see if she can find out any records of documents that date back to Raytheon, because they employed literally 1,000 people at that site at one time.
Right, there's plenty of parking around the back and around the side, right?
Will be-
But like, if you're thinking about putting businesses over here, like restaurants and
Yeah.
stuff, which I don't think will fly.
No, again, that was
That's just a,
pipe dream for our architect, but.
Yeah,
The architect walked into a space room, let's be really clear.
because then that would,
They put it on the prelim.
they would need places to park, because nobody's gonna want to eat here and walk way over here to this park.
That was,
Right, that was a good thought, but, you're not speaking with a brewery or a restaurant.
No. Again, the architect, there's a building in the back where there's a tractor.
I got you.
And they just looked at the space and they said this would be great for a brewery and the water.
For years, they've been trying to put this there or that there, but it's not zoned that, it's zoned industrial.
Exactly.
It's a prime piece of industrial land.
Yeah, the river's right there. If you can imagine it, but that was just their dream.
yeah, it's a great location. I know that, Mr. Woods and I serve on the Cannabis Advisory Board also in town.
Yeah.
So we've looked at everything extensively in regards to what you'd like to do. And I'll just give you my own personal opinion, is that I'm finally glad to see that someone's going to lease the space at 620 Spring Street. Secondly, I'll say this, is that following the CCC for many years and being on the Cannabis Advisory Board, I noticed how the state had gone out and issued licenses. I'm glad to see that finally some minority owners are finally getting to do. And they're out there, and someone like you to come to Dayton is willing to put yourself on the line to come here and do your business. So I think that's fantastic. So,
So far, we appreciate the welcome we've received so far.
Yeah.
We look forward to continuing to work with.
But we're happy to have you. I have been asking for a site visit to another facility I'm sure you talked to Mr. Mullen about it.
Yeah, there was.
I've been talking to Mr. Mullen about it.
Yeah.
Because we are gonna have to have a public hearing,
Yeah,
and I would like to have a little bit of, eye contact with what, and nose contact, because I'm already getting complaints now, I live over there. I live very close to the mill.
yeah, so we can do either, I think it's in Taunton, it's Commonwealth Alternative Care.
That one stinks pretty bad outside, I'm gonna tell you.
We'll go to that.
That's Mozone Boulevard?
Yeah.
Mozone Boulevard?
Yeah, Mazone Boulevard.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that has an awful smell from it.
Isn't there a facility in Milford, I thought? Isn't there a big,
That's Sierra.
I heard there's one in Brock.
That's in good health. We can get you over there.
okay.
The one,
I think we need to take a field trip,
Okay.
right? Because, we're responsible to report back to the citizens of this town,
Sure.
right? And I already have neighbors squawking to me about how bad is it gonna smell.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to give them an educated answer.
So, yeah, I know that we already did a first phase with some of the selectmen. They went over to In Good Health in Brockton, and we have a relationship with
But the selectmen are not the people who grant you this permit.
Exactly.
They might like marijuana. Okay, but they are not the granting
Let's
authority.
use the proper terminology. Cannabis, Mr. Woods. No, I just say this is that, I'm just trying to figure out, where do you, receive your product from?
So right now in Boston, we have a core group of suppliers. So it could be In Good Health, it could be Sierra, it could be Freshly Baked down here in Taunton.
Yeah, they just do strictly the manufacturing, right? They're not cultivating on site, they're just manufacturing.
No,
Yeah, they came to us before, remember?
yeah, oh, I know, yeah. The old office manager from the ZBA is their production manager now. Jonathan, he's a really, really nice guy too.
So
Yeah.
what other local location could you take us to?
I think the easiest one is In Good Health. We have a great relationship with them, and they've already, extended themselves for, some of the selectmen years. So that would be the easiest one. Again, Commonwealth, the hard part about Commonwealth Alternative Care is they're run out of another state. They're more corporatized. And so it's harder to drill down to the person who would be responsible locally. But In Good Health,
and if we can.
most everything else is up in Holyoke. That's the hard.
Yeah, exactly, that's a 2-hour ride from here.
Yes, Milford, we can get you into Milford.
We'll have to see if we can work something out with the town administrator, and we'll reach out to Pure.
I've been after
Yeah,
for it.
Kerry will reach out to Pure Oasis, and let's get something set up, because I'm looking at our meeting schedule for December, and
We want to get this ball rolling as fast as we
Yeah,
can.
absolutely.
After you make your purchase, you're gonna want to make a move.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're trying to time it out, but really, the civil engineers had the hardest time trying to figure out this parking requirement, because it really is, it's.
Well, and the waiver requirement also.
Yeah.
Right, and we'll work on that end of it.
I think
Figure out
you
where
can
we
be
have to
assured
work
that we will work with you in every aspect of the work. And, we'll have to be a little give and take if we need to, and that, I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
Awesome.
So at least preliminarily, it sounds like existing, proposed, obviously, if we have anything kind of firm on beyond the cannabis on what we think is going to be proposed, we can include that. But then as things develop and the property develops, folks we would come back and amend to address the particular use going in, the size of it, their need, and the existing parking.
I think that's the best way
Yeah.
in my view.
Fair enough.
I'm looking at our next meeting would be November 17th. You gentlemen would not be prepared for that. We meet on the first and third Wednesdays of the month, which would be December 1st to the 15th. I don't know what your time frame would be to get us some documents as soon as you can, some, better engineering, the requests, fill out all the paperwork, talk to Mrs. East today, our office manager, and let's get your application going.
Yeah, I think based on when I think the survey is coming in, if anything, it's going to be the second meeting in December, and we may even be first or second meeting in
In general, okay, yeah, because we're trying to,
Definitely excited to get going.
we're, we're not trying to expedite the process so fast that residents, throw up the red flag. It's just, we're trying to, work with you as best we can and provide everything that we can to you also, so.
Yeah, and there's, obviously, there's a lot we can pull together to provide, including air quality. And
Do you gentlemen have business cards with you?
I do not, I usually don't carry.
like, it's only because
I'm sure Mrs. Easterday has all your
Yeah,
information.
we've been in contact.
Mr. Mullins, get your number.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I do have one in the car, but I traveled late and left my messenger
So you
bag.
gentlemen are all set, you already have your community host agreement, you're just about ready to go.
We just, again, this is just a pre-planning for the special permit so that we're all on the same page because the scope is so large and really, I think just this parking component, that's a big variable. And when we present, we want it to be complete and accurate and we just don't want, to delay.
Understood.
And if you try and do the whole building, if the parking looks fairly substantial, and it may be, first of all, it should be overkill. So we wanted to, and have the conversation so we understood how to frame the requests, and make sure we're asking for what you need us to ask for, and we're gonna have a little dialogue so we all know where we're coming from. So we really appreciate your time.
Thank you very
Okay, I
much.
just want to tell you, before you go, I'd like to say, if you're thinking about changing the zoning over there, that takes a 2/3 majority at a town meeting. It's very tough to get.
Yeah, no, we have no intention.
Okay, just,
I mean, it's a beautiful site, the river is,
right.
that is serene back there, but, we have a primary focus. So,
Good. We're on board.
excellent. Okay, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, we appreciate you coming in, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. We look forward to seeing you gentlemen in the future.
You will. You absolutely will.
Thank you again.
Be a neighbor now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drive safe.
Have a good night.
Gentlemen, I'm going to move on to 4B under business, and that is to review, discuss, and act on the appointment representative to the Industrial Development Committee. Now, I've had discussions with Mr. Figueredo about this, and he has agreed to go back and serve again on the Industrial Development Committee. I think it's a great board. They can get a lot done for the residents of town. They're looking at exactly what the mission states. They're looking at their duties and responsibilities. I'm just going to read this right now under the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 8A, and this is the duties and responsibilities of the industrial development individuals. And as a city or town which accepts this section may establish a development and industrial commission for the promotion and development of the industrial resources of said city or town. Such commissions shall conduct researches into industrial conditions, investigate and assist in the establishment of educational or commercial projects, including projects involving private enterprise for the purpose of expanding or strengthening the local economy, and shall seek to coordinate the activities of unofficial bodies organized for said purposes, and may advertise, prepare, print, distribute books, maps, charts, and pamphlets, which in its judgment will further the purposes for which it is established. The commission may appoint such clerks and other employees as it may require. Such commissions shall consist of not less than 5, nor more than 15 members. The members in cities shall be appointed by the mayor, subject to the provisions of the city charter, except in cities operating under a Plan D or a Plan E form of city charter. Said appointments shall be by the city manager, subject to the provisions of the city charter. And in towns, they shall be appointed by the selectmen, excepting towns having a manager form of government, in which towns such appointments shall be made by the town manager. When a commission is first established, the terms of the members shall be for such length not exceeding 5 years, and so arranged that the terms of approximately 1/5 of the members will expire each year. That way, every year, if someone wants to come on board, it would change, it would rotate, and also give the rotating ability for the individual to serve as the chairman of that committee. Not exceeding 5 years, so arranged that the terms of approximately 1/5 of the members will expire each year, and its successors shall be appointed for terms of 5 years each, Any member of a board so appointed in a city may be removed for cause after a public hearing if requested by the mayor with the approval of the city council. A vacancy occurring otherwise than by expiration of the term shall be filled for the unexpired term in each city in the same manner as the original appointment and in a town as provided in section 11 of chapter 41. So I believe the members have also had an opportunity to talk with Mr. Figueredo about this individually, which is, of course, legal under the law, and he is willing to serve. So I'm going to entertain a motion. First of all, I'm going to ask Mr. Figueredo, are you willing to be the representative from the planning board to the Industrial and Development Commission?
Yes.
Mr. Figueredo has agreed to serve.
I'll make a motion to appoint Joe Figueredo to be the representative of the Industrial Development Committee.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, gentlemen, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you,
You're
Joe.
gonna be a great representative for us. Gentlemen, I'm gonna entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of October 20th of 2021.
So moved.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. We have no correspondence for this evening. Do we have any public input? I see no one has zoomed in with us this evening on public inputs. Gentlemen, before we adjourn, it's just a reminder, our next meeting is November 17th at 6 PM. The location will be determined. We're not sure if Forest Hills is going to be back on their agenda again. And I do believe that the solar company is going to be back on the agenda again too, for the modifications to the
On
solar
the next meeting.
at our next meeting.
Wow.
Our peer review engineer was there with us on the walkthrough yesterday, and I do believe that he should be ready to give us the information probably sometime next week, so we should be set for our meeting.
It's gonna be a long night.
So be prepared. Ladies and gentlemen of the public, thank you as always for watching the planning board meeting. And again, our next meeting will be on November 17th with a location to be determined. Before we leave, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion been made, and second. Any further discussion on adjournment? Before we adjourn, I'd like to thank Cable TV as always for coming out. These people are volunteers. Miss Medeiros, I'm sorry, excuse me, has been at this for a number of years now, and she has a new colleague with her. I wish I would be introduced to him. I'm sure we will. Nathan Conti, pleasure to meet you, sir. Thank you very much for volunteering for Cable TV. I know it can be a thankless job. So I want to thank Cable as always. I'd like to thank the residents of the town of Dayton for tuning in this evening. And we are formally, I'm going to put it to a vote for adjournment. There's been a motion in the second on adjournment. Let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries.
Good night, Kate.
Good night, Cable. Thank you.
Still on, it was on YouTube, so until next.